Yeah.
Okay. So Merrill, you have a pretty strong set of beliefs when it comes to antecedent interventions. So much so that you've written raps about it. Can you kind of give us the breakdown, either musically or otherwise,
I wasn't
where
prepared
your stance on this
to
lies?
do it musically, but I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you just regular. That that talk actually came out of people using extensive antecedent manipulations and then claiming victory. Like, so that's what everything that almost all the presentations I do starts with somebody pissing me off. So like, instead of taking it out on them, I like stew on it for a while and I talk to some colleagues and then I write. And so that's where the antecedent manipulations one came from, because it was people like doing these extensive things, eliminating everything they could think of, every aversive that could possibly set the kid off, and then saying he's doing great. And I'm like, no, he's not doing great. It's a magic trick. It's, I mean, yeah, he's stable, but you're claiming victory, and that's like the emperor's got no clothes. So that was kind of like where it started. So what it really is that it's not that there's anything wrong with these things, like just, and by the way, antecedent manipulations are very broad, but the most common is eliminating aversives, mild aversive. Oh, he doesn't like it when you do it like this. Well, okay, I won't do it like that. That is hands down the most common one, not just for children with autism, although it's popular, but pretty much anybody, any kid I've ever worked with. Oh, well, if he made a mistake, don't use the word wrong. Okay, well, that would be another antecedent manipulation. That'd be walking on eggshells. So that kind of a thing is, my whole thing is that for quick stability, those are wonderful things to do. And I might even do what I would call unreasonable amounts of antecedent manipulations, like crazy, unreasonable things. Like, okay, nobody smile at him at all, or nobody give any demand, ask him to do anything for the first 3 days. Nothing, not even to look at you. All right. Okay. If it was a really dangerous person and you just needed some peace while you were getting some information or something, right? I've done crazy things like that, where we do these real extensive, nobody do anything, look anyway, say any, so that we don't get wished into the cornfield, which is an episode from On the Twilight Zone. But it just basically means you're afraid to upset the apple cart in any way. That's great to buy you some time and to gain some understanding what pisses people off. But what started me off on this is people never stopping it and then just doing more and more of it. And then putting it under the rubric of we're supporting the person. I'm like, you're not supporting them now. Now you're imprisoning them. You're imprisoning them in a world that has to be a very detailed, specific way, or there's behavior problems. And so that's what I saw starting to happen. And that still happens extensively, I think. Maybe not as bad as it was happening, but I don't know, because people who are just getting introduced to behavior analysis, that might be all they know to do. So it might be more rampant than we think. I mean, I honestly don't know. But
I
yes,
would say
that's kind of where it came from. That's kind of the whole thing. And by the way, it's not that they're bad. It's just this blind use of them and just never abandoning them, never having a plan for where are we going to go with this? Are we just going to eliminate these things forever? So that's the criticism. That's the problem. Yeah.
I mean, I think to respond to like, you don't know if it's still happening, I would say my new job here as a consultant, I work, exclusively with schools, and that's all they do all day, every day. Every problem I come across is this kid just wanders the halls all day, because if we try and make him do anything, he just tears the whole room apart. And I was like, sounds like it's working really well for you. And so I would say that's been like 90% of my caseload this year. So my experience is, yeah, it's still happening. I don't know about anyone else.
Yeah, and that's like a blind antecedent manipulation where there's maybe there is some thought, but nobody does anything about it. So there's ones where you like, there's no consequence of eliminating something. So, somebody says like, this happened before. He doesn't like his sandwiches cut on the diagonal. You have to cut them horizontally. Okay. And I was like, oh, all right. He's a little picky, but you know what? in the big scheme of things, we can do that. Okay. It's not a giant problem, right? But if it's, no one is allowed to wear glasses that he comes into contact with because it freaks him out. No, we're fixing this. He can't move to the place where everybody had laser eye surgery. Okay. That's not what we're doing with this child. Just no, stop it. Okay. But that's the point. You can do that in a classroom. Mom and dad can do that. What's your long-term goal for this kiddo? Going to live in the land of perfect vision? So you get me. So that's kind of where I think people, they're not really thinking, where is this going? They're kind of thinking like, I don't really care where it's going. I'm just waiting for the kid to age out of my classroom, okay? And then it'll be somebody else's problem because I'm just going to maintain him on an even keel till he's in the next grade. So, which is a lot of what happens, and they pass them off to the next person. It's just like, you can't keep doing that to people. So, yeah, I mean, now they may not mean to do that, but that happens quite a bit, you know? So I just need to keep the peace in my room, right? And that's great, but if it means you're not getting anywhere, or you're giving up your educational responsibilities and letting them wander the hall or sleep all days, which is another real common one, right? By the way, a lot of that happens because it's driven by, not all of it, but much of it, I believe, it's driven by a mentality of restraint reduction as the primary goal. And it's a goal, but it actually, what I call it is a good outcome. It should never be a goal, but it is, unfortunately. And when you make it a goal, no one really looks very hard at how you get there. So if the kids walk in the hall all day, well, has there been any crisis? No. Victory. Well, has he learned anything? Well, no. Well, we won't get in the papers because he didn't learn anything, but if we restrain him, there's going to be a reporter here. You know, it's like those high profile versus nobody looks at it kind of thing sometimes, I think. But anyway, yeah, I think that some of it is some of it has to do with that, other problems that we see. Oh, somebody said something in the chat.
Perfect. Trev, did you have a follow-up question to your question?
Something said, okay, I'm just looking at what Myra Jade said in chat. Never mind. Okay.
Yeah, Myra said that antecedent manipulations are great for husbands as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
partners.
They work with everybody. Yeah, they work with everybody. The question is, are you doing too many of them?
But not for husbands who are in the same field as you, because he sees right through you.
Well, no, you know what? The thing is, depending on what it is, even, you know, what I found is even when sometimes you know what someone's doing, sometimes it's still effective anyway. Like when you know someone is overtly praising you, but they're kind of into it, you kind of appreciate it anyway, even though you know what they're doing. Because sometimes, I mean, when it's really powerful, even when you can tack the contingency, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It may mean somewhat less powerful, but a lot of times that's happened with me. And even though if it was somebody you liked, like and I'd even say, I know what you're doing, but I still appreciate it. You know, it was that kind of a thing.
I do kind of have like a building question, and I haven't had a chance to really formulate it perfectly, so it might not come out quite right.
Just like my answer.
Hey, I mean, you wear it well. Let's see what I can do. So I mean, I get the feeling that for staff working in schools, whether it's teachers or educators, shadows, resource teachers, however, whatever title they have, if they're kind of working in the field, the motivations could be varied for why they kind of stick to antecedents, right? So depending on their backgrounds and the levels of support that they're getting, or even their skill set, right? You don't know what you don't know.
100%. It'd be like
so if that's all you know.
It'd be like you do a functional analysis of the reasons why they're doing it, kind of.
Right. So there could be, you know, any number of reasons, any combination of those reasons in different amounts. So something you mentioned though was the intervention plan or like the goal setting, where maybe the goals that they're selecting are poorly worded or poorly selected.
Sure.
If your goal setting is looking for an absence of behavior, well then great, antecedent manipulations might get you close to that. So where can you kind of start looking? Because at least where we work now, the amount of time that you get to spend with teachers or frontline staff if you're consulting, so you're not working directly in the school, but if you're consulting, it's pretty low. Like you're kind of given a snapshot and maybe you've got a few sessions to try and do something. So where can you kind of put your attention if you're trying to go beyond just antecedent manipulations, which understandably are attractive for people working in those areas?
Here's what I'd say. It gets down to a fundamental understanding of the problem or problems. And the problem is not the behavior problem you got called in for. That's not the problem. That's the symptom of a set of interrelated problems. It is a problem, the head banging, the biting, the aggression, the foul language. Those are all problems, right? But those are never the problems. Those are symptoms of a set of interrelated problems that give rise to them, right? And the thing is, if you only understand it as get rid of bad behavior and you don't understand the larger context, then antecedent manipulation seemed great. Or like you said, framing it in terms of, well, what's the problem? He has X behavior. Well, it sounds to me like the solution needs to be absence of X behavior. Well, if that's what they're doing, right, then the philosophy is one of, it doesn't matter where it comes from or why it exists. It just needs to be gone. That's an improper philosophy for education. So that's what I think it has to start with. And so like when you mentioned curriculum, we would go back and start with, as an example, right? Okay, why does he bite you? Well, he bites because I put a task demand on him. Oh, okay, so he wants to escape the task. And then most behavior analysts stop there, but we have to go further. Why does he want to escape the task? He doesn't understand the task. Why doesn't he understand the task? Because we chose the wrong damn task in the wrong order, and it doesn't really have any meaning for him. It only has meaning for us and our rules, or meanings for the parents. And so because we've chosen the wrong curriculum, for example, right, we're put in a situation of saying, well, everything else seems fine, but we just have this behavior problem we have to get rid of. No, everything isn't fine. You have everything backwards and screwed up and in the wrong order. It's not fine at all, right? And if you had it fine, we might not be seeing such tremendous problems generated by me forcing you to do a task that produces little reinforcement for you, mostly aversives because you don't know why you're doing it, right? And just endless frustration. And it has no functional immediate outcome for you, as an example, for like a lower functioning nonverbal person. So in a situation like that, starting with a philosophy of, I think everything else is right, we just have to get rid of this darned behavior. That's not what it is. And we have to get people to recognize it's other things. It's lack of an appropriate repertoire. It's lack of ability to communicate. It's lack of the ability to make choices. It's, and I think that if you've already gotten ahead of us, the behavior analysts, in your philosophy of, thank God you're here, I have this problem behavior, we just need it squashed. And that's all I need you for. I don't need you to understand this child any better. I just need you to make this thing go away. And if that's the mentality, then I think that's why these things are attractive. You know what I mean? It's I don't need to go any further. I don't need to think about it any deeper. I don't need to get into this kid's head and figure out what his day is like for him or her, right? So I call them like blind procedures. They don't take a lot of thought. They don't take a lot of analysis. You throw them at people. So antecedent manipulations fall under that category, right? You need to know minimum about them. You don't need to know the function of behavior. You do need to know what the antecedent is. When does he bite you? Whenever we put a task on the table. Okay, so there's some assessment, some analysis, just extremely limited. But does that kind of get at what you're?
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, my question was not well formulated, so there were a lot of different things you could answer. But definitely, I mean, what I'm kind of hearing in your answer is that it's a philosophical, not necessarily a problem, but it's not a shared philosophy. So if you're trying to kind of shift someone's understanding, it's quite a bit bigger than just a 3-hour consult. You're never just going to change someone's mind.
No, I don't think you're gonna. And so the thing is, I think you have to make a decision. Am I gonna not change their mind have them think I am here to make bad behavior go away and try to trick them into doing it the right way, which you could do, right? Or do I try to get them to understand, does this make sense to you what they're, because here's one problem. Let's say that, and I've had this, where the teacher says to me, Merrill, they almost apologize to me. I know it seems silly to work on this, and I apologize, but in the IEP, the parents insisted, so we have to teach this. And everyone seemed to know it was wrong except for the parents, and the child is fighting them on it. You know, and so in a situation like that, they already understood part of this problem is it's not simply the bad behavior. It is this child should not be working on this, right? So they already, in some places they know that, in some places they don't. So, you know, in the places where they don't, I think it's important to show them that part of the reason why, I'm not saying it is in every case, of course, but in cases where it's related to curriculum, we might say to them, part of the reason you're getting bitten is you're teaching a nonverbal child how to write, and there's not much intrinsic motivation for them to do it. They don't know what they're doing. They only know it's hard, right? And it's not going to be functional for them because they can't do it independently and probably will never. But somebody thought it would be nice because they're of the correct age and they're in the correct grade. So we should try it, right? Even though they can't talk, we should try it because everybody else is doing it. We see this a lot. But that's another example of we don't really understand this child very well and what we're teaching them. And part of what we're dealing with sometimes is fallout from this. And then we're just trying to get rid of the bad behavior, like clean up this mess from this bad curriculum I chose. Or it's not always like this, but I've been in situations where it was like, Merrill, help this child accept this horrible curriculum that they really shouldn't be doing. I'm like, no, why would you ask me to do that? But that's kind of what they're asking me sometimes, right? You know, and so I think it's important to have a discussion at some point and say, all right, this is what this means. This is what I think is happening. Does anybody care about this, that the curriculum is wrong? How much time do you want to spend doing this, you know? But a lot of people don't want to have those discussions. They're uncomfortable. So, you know, it's easier to say everything else is fine at our school. There's a pesky behavior problem. We don't want you to mess with anything else. We just want you to fix the pesky behavior problem, even though it may be a symptom of a poor administration, angry, resentful staff. Guys, we used to have behavior problems that were related to staff being pissed at administration and angry staff angry at each other, staff angry at administration, walking around the home where they're helping people, right? And they're walking around the home pissed off, right? And that's related to an administrative issue. So I'm just giving this as an example that to go in as the behavior analyst and say, hey, this guy's having bad behavior problems, say everyone around him is super angry, okay? Everyone interacting with him is super angry. This has to be addressed, right? I'm just giving that as an example, as sometimes we have to take people aside, the principal, the ESE coordinator for the school, the autism coordinator, and say, hey, you got some bigger issues here that are related to the behavior problems you're seeing. Not saying that they're causing everything that happens. Many behavior problems happen completely independently of anything we do, medical issues, stuff like that, right? But a lot of these have a lot to do with curriculum, administrative issues, policies, rules, regulations, scheduling. You know, that no one wants to look at or do anything about, in my experience. But yeah, I think those are really insightful things you bring up and to talk about with people. I think for a lot of these places, I just think a lot of people have the idea that in some places you can, like in places with good leadership and people that are hungry and want to do well, they just need some help. Yeah, you go in there with a few great tools and people can do awesome things. But if you go into a place that's broken philosophically or leadership wise, or what is our vision? Let me just give you an example. Is our big value stay out of the papers, don't get in trouble, don't get sued, and don't have parents get angry at you? Is that what's most important to us? Or is what's most important to us moving children forward in their education, even if it's very difficult? What are our values, right? And if they say the latter, well, then a lot of these things should be a non-issue. If it's mainly stay out of the papers and stay out of trouble, then do your antecedent manipulations, give your little tricks to my staff and get the hell out of my school. And I don't want to do anything else. So one of the issues is, if you did a functional assessment of the administration, what are their aversives? What are their pain points? What are they worried about? What do they take pride in? And a lot of times, if those things aren't, in my opinion, right, then the whole thing's not aligned. And you got like a broken organization. And then we get called in to clean some of these behavioral messes that are in part sometimes due to these administrative policy issues, philosophical differences even, right? That they trickle down and they affect things, right? Sometimes in little ways, sometimes I think in big ways.
I feel like many people in this room have experience with what you're talking about without wanting to like speak to it directly. But I just feel like working in Quebec, it's pretty limited network, and you don't have a lot of options as behavior analysts. So you all end up working for places where the values are and incentives for doing what we do is like really wrong, and we don't have money for it. So you just kind of, you go where you can survive. So I feel like that point spoke to that a lot, actually.